The Golden Age of WWE. Larger than life, of fantasy. Step in the ring, feel history. Welcome to the Golden WWE.
Well, it's another edition of our Golden Era podcast with me and Mr. Mooney. Today we're talking about part 2 of SummerSlam 1982 from London, England. Mr. Mooney, how you doing today?
I am doing just fine, Steve. Going back and thinking about and reliving the glory of SummerSlam 1992.
Wow.
Let's do it.
I was going to close my eyes. I feel like I was there for a minute with that little boy or girl in the front. He's going to win or wants to or not.
Come on, mate. Come on, mate. Yeah,
I love it. The opening of this SummerSlam 92 is so classic to me because they keep showing, the police and the people. They even show 3 girls. You can clearly tell someone's behind the camera yelling to these 3 girls like, okay, at one point you're all going to yell, you love Shawn Michaels, okay? When I count to 3. They're like, 1, 2, one girl's like, we love Shawn Michaels. The other 2 yell it at different times. Like, all right, we failed. Yeah. But we're going to air that. We're not going to do it again. We're just going to move on to the next person.
You got to go.
It's hilarious. Yeah. I love this event for that exact reason.
Oh, there's so much more to love, though, Steve. This was, as I've said, this favorite events of all time. So I love talking about it.
Now, there's been so many historical events in WWF while you were there. Why is SummerSlam 92, personally for you, your favorite, or you believe this is the greater event the WWF ever produced as well?
Well, just for the simple fact that originally, I hadn't seen a whole lot of the world at the time. And going to England for an event was pretty exciting. And also, you have to think about what was happening with the WWE at the time. Business wasn't great, and so they were struggling to find something that was going to get a jump start, get things really going and rolling. And the UK ended up being the perfect event to do it because while it had ebbed a bit in the United States, we had really started to build up again and get a lot of attention in England as Vince had always had the idea of going worldwide, literally going and doing events all over the world. And that was the business plan and this really was the foray into doing it, and to be able to go to England and then pretty much sell out Wembley Stadium was an awesome feat at the time to, go and see a professional wrestling event. And they've talked here and there about, the numbers or whatever, but come on. I was there. There was a lot of people and, 80,000 plus. But even, putting even that aside, there was just so much happening. Now, as in part 1, we went right through that whole main event, main event, especially focusing on Bret and Davey Boy Smith and that matchup. But there was it was an incredibly loaded card. They just threw everything out there. A lot of matches that people didn't see at that event. And but there were some great matchups, but also the drama that was going on behind the scenes. Now, of course, with Bret and Davey, we've talked that at length. Mm-hmm. But you had the Legion of Doom there, and Mike Hegseth and what was happening with him, and there was a lot happening behind the scenes as well with the Macho Man and the Ultimate Warrior, and just all these other events going on to pull this all together. So for a number of reasons, and I'm just scratching the surface there, that is why this to me was one of the greatest events. And you can, take it as a fan and as you watch it as a pay-per-view and judge it that way. But there's just so many more layers to it for me. And that's why it really has stood out to me over all the years and all the different events that I was a part of.
Yeah, you are right though. Like if anyone wants to say like, oh, it wasn't sold out, dude, watch the event. It is filled. Like if you can find one seat empty, then you're really good at finding Where's Waldo books. Like you're really good at that because this is huge.
And it was electrified.
Oh my God.
Start to finish. And the WWE really delivered that day as far as giving people what they want. And as I said, there were so many matches that we talked about this before when we in part one of this discussion, that there were a lot of matches that would have certainly been great to be a part of the pay-per-view that didn't even make it. So it definitely delivered for the fans that had the opportunity to be there that day.
Oh yeah, there's 11 matches for the actual card. What airs on the US is one version. What airs in the UK is another version. What you saw live in the audience, a different version. So there's 3 versions out there of SummerSlam 1992. And as you mentioned, we did do part 1 where we took a deep ass dive into Bret Hart versus Bulldog, from Diana Hart, clips from your old interviews from Primetime with Sean Mooney, to Bret Hart's quotations from his book, which I advise watch. It's amazing. Read. It's amazing. Yeah. And definitely. From there, we will put down in the description part 1 of this. And if I feel nice and fancy, I will add them both together into a one mega episode. But for today, we're really going to dive into everything besides Bret Hart and Bulldog, because we already discussed that for over an hour last week. And you mentioned matches missing. It's interesting when you look up and down the card, what is missing from this? We don't get Papa Shango versus Tito Santana in America. That does not air. We did not get Tatanka versus the Berserker, but yet you can find Tatanka versus Berserker online. There's a 6-man tag match, Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Bushwhackers, and take on the Mountie and the Nasty Boys. And in the UK television version of this program, the UK got Crush versus Repo Man. In the United States, we did not get Crush versus Repo Man. So I'm just wondering, personally for you, why do you think some matches for time restraints are airing in UK, some are not airing in the USA, but yet this was recorded in Saturday in London, England, and it airs on Monday in the US? You have time to maybe cut some things out or move some things around. Like, why do you feel like all these matches are missing and not some are just put in there randomly?
Well, that is a great question, considering, when you're doing a pay-per-view. And they did have windows with the satellite and that kind of thing where you could, you had to be off at a certain time.
Yeah, I remember
windows. That. Yeah. And so it was, plotting it out to make sure you could fit all this in. I think part of it is the decision on the booking end of it, why some of these matches did make the cut and other ones didn't. And, maybe you have to go back to a point where they're thinking, okay, we're going to try and push this guy. Let's see. This is a great stage to get them out there and see, get with the reaction to the crowd. People in the United States will be seeing it as well. We get to deliver something that we think that they want. But I think that was, I think there was some good decisions made. I think there were some bad decisions made. There were some of those matches that, surprising, like you mentioned, the Hacksaw match and him teaming up with the Bushwhackers. That was not a bad match. It was, you'd think, just thinking off, somebody would describe it to you, and you think, well, okay. And it really, it was a very entertaining match. So there were, fun. And it was. So, but maybe they're thinking that like it was kind of a throwaway match, or that these turned out better than you would have thought. Other ones, though, that you just had to hear the names that were involved, and you would say, well, why the hell didn't that make it? I mean, that would have been a great matchup that we didn't get to see. I had discussions with Bruce Pritchard many times about, how did you guys come about deciding how this was going to happen? And, at the time he would say, well, it's basically like saying, like, you try it, like you got all this, you got to put it out there. And it's like everything else. It's like, people you put on the field for a game, and then afterwards people are like, well, I wasn't that guy. It's
I get it. Yeah.
Armchair quarterbacks. But I think overall that it was a very good pay-per-view overall, and the matches, the majority of the matches were very good that day. Everybody was on their A game, and for a number of reasons, because we all understood this really is the world stage. It's not like we didn't deliver when we were in the States, but everybody had that feeling that, we had this youth movement going, and this was the chance to show the world, because it was in England. It was at Wembley Stadium in front of a gigantic crowd. So everybody brought their A game. except as we will get into, there were a few individuals that, with other circumstances of impacting them, may not have been on their A game that day.
Yeah. But it's also interesting that
is that a big enough tease?
I think it's a big enough tease. We will get to that
Yeah.
person in a minute.
Yeah.
But the one thing that someone is missing from this card, originally booked, it's supposed to be the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich versus Papa Shango at this SummerSlam. It's advertised. There's a photo of it. It's out there. But yet, in our hour-long episode about when Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich, came into the WWF, we discussed in detail about his struggles with drugs and substance abuse. And here, he pretty much has vanished from the WWF cards in general around this time. Like 92, it's very hard to find Texas Tornado matches on television as well. But he's missing from the card. Less than 6 months later, he is, arrested for cocaine possession. He's involved with the law. Obviously, we talked about his suicide and how unfortunate that was. But he's released in August of 92. This is August of 92. He doesn't make the card. Then he's laid off later on. We've talked about it before, but why do you think that they even advertised him to be here when they probably knew that he wasn't going to show up or not make it?
Well, I think that in many cases, and they wanted Kerry to succeed. They really did. There was a great push behind him for him because he somebody, it's a performer, and what he could do in the ring when this brain was cleared, he was tremendous. He was a great performer and really popular with the crowd. He had a charisma about him we're attracted to, and they wanted him to succeed. But Steve, as we have seen time and time again, WWE history, that it is really incredible where you see guys that reach incredible heights very quickly, and they ride away for a bit, and then when those outside forces start to impact them, the fall from grace can be quick and brutal.
Right.
And you see that. We've talked about Davey Boy and his struggles. He was at a point in his career. This was certainly it maybe other instances you can name, but that was certainly a point in his career where everybody thought, okay, now he gets back on track and he has this momentum, and look what happened with him. And Kerry was the same way. You look back at the trajectory of his career when he came to the WWE, and they gave him a tremendous push right away.
Yep,
he's the Intercontinental Champion, right? And you see it, and you could graph it, you could just see it, and it goes all the way up, and then it just went all of a sudden. It was just, what happened? We know what happened, and I think that they didn't put him on the card thinking, well, he might not. I think they truly believed that he was going to be able to be there because people had talked about, regardless of a lot of his problems, that he did make his dates, and that somehow he could pull it together. At some point, you run out of road, and then suddenly there's no pavement anymore. It's just rocky, that's the dirt road with all the bumps and everything, and then soon you've got a dead end. Crazy kind of analogy there, but that's kind of the way it is. You got that smooth sailing, and you get on that groove, and then these forces come in, and that's what happened. And it's we've talked about it before. It's one of the more tragic in the WWE and in all of professional wrestling to see what happened to Kerry, because it could have been, as we've said before, a unbelievable career there. He could have had a great ride, and it's just unfortunate that it didn't last that long.
True. I think I honestly, like, from a fan perspective, I didn't know, you don't really see the drug issues on television because they're not there. But yet when you watch him, you're like, Intercontinental Champion right away. Oh, he's teaming up with Legion of Doom and Warrior, and he's having a great run. And then you get to 91, and it's kind of up and down, up and down, up and down. And then you get to 92, and it's like he just disappears from television. And so without the internet, really, you wouldn't have known. You just like, oh, he's gone. I don't know where he is. And so I would have liked to see him versus Papa Shango here, but We didn't get that. But what we did get is a championship match between Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior. That's amazing. What a great thing to write down on pieces of paper, right? Why, though, do you personally feel like Ric Flair was left off the card? He was champion WrestleMania 8, a double main event. He won the world title at Royal Rumble 92 in a 30-man Royal Rumble match. He's had a great run. We were supposed to get him versus Hogan at WrestleMania. We didn't get that. But why do you think Ric Flair is not on this card? Makes no sense.
Or does it? I'll think about how. Well, because as we know, the fanfare of him coming in and them wanting it to happen, but you can wish all you want. And as we see, it wasn't too much longer after that he wasn't there anymore. So I think that it had started to wane. They were still giving him an opportunity there, but getting back to this matchup and the fact that they did involve him and Mr. Perfect, you're kind of trying to make it all happen by the more you put into the bag, I guess, in a sense, where, okay, we'll just load it up. And that match in itself was I think it was one of the best matches the Warrior ever had. And of course, that was because of Randy Savage. And it was in the fact that, he had to go that long in the ring and make it entertaining and not just beating his chest and shaking the ropes and, and clotheslining Randy 1,000 times. And you think about what it all came down to. And then you're thinking, like, why are they they're beating up both of them? What are they trying to accomplish here? Because it's one or the other. They've formed an alliance somehow, an ugly alliance with one of the opponents in there, and they help him win and all. But they're in there. They go in and smack Randy with a chair. They get war. Then Hebner gets knocked out. He's outside. Randy goes outside. Flair comes in with the brass knuckles and then takes out the Warrior. After all these, I'm still wondering what's the angle here to beat up both of them. Because behind the scenes there was talk they wanted to turn Warrior heel, and he wasn't going for it. So I just thought it was a great distraction that. Let's make this a great match and let it stand on its own. And I think that the crowd would have appreciated that. But then we had all these other distractions from ringside coming in. And I mean, I don't know that it was something that was necessary. And of course, they're thinking down the road, what we're going to do from here. But I think for that stage, it should have just been what it was and make it a great match. And, everybody would have been happy. But,
I agree.
For me, there was just too much. It was too much, and I thought it was a distraction, and it took away from what that match was and what it could have been remembered as.
It's just funny to think of Ric Flair in 92 because Royal Rumble, he wins the championship. That's great. Then WrestleMania 8, his storyline with Savage is, I'm going to post nude pictures of Miss Elizabeth on the big screen. Okay. Now, SummerSlam 92, it's, hey, Mr. Perfect is in someone's corner, but we don't know who it is. So the mistrust leading up to this event is all about Savage and Warrior can't trust in each other because they believe each one is working with Mr. Perfect and Ric Flair. Whose corner is Mr. Perfect in? That is what this match is all about. They even have a great match. It's the Nasty Boys versus the Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior. And there's always like this, my back's turned, you bump into me by accident because someone pushed me into you. Yeah. And they kick the shit out of Macho Man and Warrior. Nasty Boys do, Ric Flair does, Mr. Perfect does. But yet we're still underneath the impression of one of them is working with Mr. Perfect. Why would you beat me up on television for weeks and then lead me into this event? Because even Lord Alfred Hayes, who I love dearly, he's backstage and he's knocking on doors and he's trying to get answers. He even says at one point during this event, he's like, I'm going to go into the Ultimate Warrior's room. I usually would use judgment, but today not. And he goes to open the door and the door just slams back in his face. Like, oh my, oh dear. Like, Lord Alfred Hayes stole the show from me while watching this again
Yeah.
after 20 years because he's like, I always use judgment, but today I need answers. And he tries to get him and he does not get him. And we find out that nobody's working with Mr. Perfect. It was all a ruse for both men to get beat up at SummerSlam. And by the way, spoiler alert, 2 weeks later, Ric Flair beats Macho Man for the world title at a not taped event that they keep telling you about on Superstars that will air this week on Primetime with Wrestling. So they gave away the actual championship match. So the question is, why not have a triple threat? Or you don't want Warrior to look weak, you don't want Savage to look weak because they both technically, like, one won the match, but one's still a champion. And that's what sucks. They're like, Ultimate Warrior, you won the match, but still world champion is Macho Man.
Yeah.
Did you need both men to get something over the mic with Howard Finkel? Like, I really wanted your thoughts. Why not a triple threat? Because we also didn't see triple threat matches ever in the WWF, ever, until like 1997, I think is the first one.
Well, as I said, I think that they wanted this to be that stage, that Warrior and Randy had worked together a lot.
WrestleMania 7, great match.
Yeah, and I don't know if they ever liked each other, but I think at some point they did have a mutual respect, and and I think that was showcased at Wembley. But there's no question about it that the only reason that match, at least for me, was a great match and brought Jim to a new level was because of Randy Savage. There's no question about it. And as I said, I think like a triple threat match would have also taken away from. I think that it was a great one to really, to me, that was the epitome of that angle for of them two working together. So I think to have involved someone else in it, and I even said about all that stuff happened at Ringside, was just took away from it. Mm-hmm. And I really wish it would have stood on its own, because I think it would have been one that was certainly remembered as a great match and one of the best for each of them. And especially on that stage. And I just think that all the rest of it was just took away from it.
No, I 100% agree, because I rewatched it and the crowd. As a kid, I remember watching this going, I don't have to rewatch this. Like, I'm never rewatch. Even as a kid, I was disappointed in this matchup. So as an adult watching it again, I'm watching it through different eyes, and I'm like, okay, this is pretty good. I don't remember it being this bad. And then out of nowhere, when Flair and Perfect come down, that lasts like 10-15 minutes of them just grabbing your leg and then punching you, and then Savage jumps off the top rope to attack them instead of getting Warrior to beat him. It just felt like the ending of
the ref
Lord of the
has
Rings
to go down.
like
That's another
ending.
Right. Then, the ref goes down, and it's just like, why are you throwing all this stuff in there? Let's have a great match. Yep. That people will be talking about forever, and something that would be on their the resume of like one of the best. And that, imagine that if that would have happened, at least for me, that it would have been tough to choose between the two. Because we talk about how great that match and Davey Boy. Imagine if that to me, if the Warrior and Randy's match would have been on those same lines, I would have said, man, that's one. Talk about a great dual main event. My God, how could But at me, it wasn't. After that, there was no question to me what I thought was the better match and what was the real main event.
Oh yeah. And Warrior during this, so when he returned, Ultimate Warrior returned after being fired by Vince McMahon at SummerSlam 91, which I'm going to keep putting every episode I mentioned in the description if you guys want to check those out, because we have discussed a lot so far in the Golden Era. But Warrior came back at WrestleMania 8. The schoolyard rumor was that wasn't the real Warrior, because he wasn't Jack anymore. It was.
Well, I was going to mention that.
So then when you get to SummerSlam 92, he is more muscular than he was at WrestleMania 8, but he's also wearing a bodysuit, like a tank top, singlet, onesie that has muscles all over it, like the Giant Gonzalez eventually would have, except with fur. I get it. Warrior is fired in Survivor Series 92 around that time because of steroids. So is he really worried about his physique? So he's going to wear a fake muscle suit?
Well, also remember, Steve, that what was happening there too, this is all when the steroid trial and everything is going on. with the stirrings and the government going after the WWE, and the edict was, that's that this is not. I mean, they were serious. Nobody can do juice. And they were doing the testing because there was enough going on. And remember the WBF, that disaster of a pay-per-view, because none of those guys could do what they usually did. It was like it wasn't the WBF, it was the W Flabby F. I mean, it was terrible. And
I didn't watch
and
it.
The same thing. Well,
I joined everybody else.
You weren't among the 600 people, I think, who got the pay-per-view, but it was pretty bad. But getting back to this, that was one of the things that I noticed, because people have talked about it too with Randy, with his wardrobe, and Randy wear a shirt all the time. And he was pretty jacked, and he during that period of time is wearing the spandex shirts, and then even to the point where and then the Warriors got the onesie on. I mean, his whole gimmick thing is just that massive cut body, and here he's got, let's be real here, it's not that he's flabby or looks, but he's not the Warrior you're used to seeing, where he's just shredded. And so he's got this onesie thing on that actually has the Giant Gonzalez kind of abs, and like, really?
The fur on there.
So I don't know if that was so much a wardrobe choice, or that he realized too, I don't look the same as what people are used to seeing. So we'll just get a little help here. So that was, that definitely stood out to me too.
Yeah. No, this is when Savage is wearing those bright pants and shirts, and he still has the hat, he still has the jacket, but still, like, again, and around this time of at least that main event, the sun has now gone down. So now you're getting a whole different feeling, because when we start this show, the real start, it's LOD versus Money Inc. The sun is out, people are, the crowd's going crazy. By the time we get to the middle of the show, the sun has gone down, and everybody, the feeling's different. The crowd's feeling a little different now. It's the crowd I want to really bring up too, is because you were there. The crowd, when you watch this event, I looked up, I remember this card. I was like, oh, LOD versus Money Inc. Well, we can talk about Rocco. We can talk about, Hawk and Hell's Angels. But I was like, but when the LOD comes out, that crowd goes berserker crazy. They're into everything. Like, for you saying this is one of the greatest events, is this one of the greatest crowds of all time as well? Yeah.
And they didn't stop. It was from start to finish. They were totally into it. And if anybody knows about, English crowds, like soccer crowds and everything, they, even when there isn't something going on, they're chanting, they're singing. And it was like, that was the feel of it. And I had experienced that before, because when I was in college playing rugby, we actually toured over there. And, I'm not saying I went to a match that I was playing with 80,000 people, but I did go to Wembley Stadium to watch a rugby match there. And, it was that same electricity, that same excitement, and and them singing songs, and it was that, as big as that kind of event. And I'd seen big crowds back here in the States, right along those lines of some of the biggest. I mean, where you can just feel it, and everybody there was in, all in from start to finish for that event. So that was another reason that it made it so special too, is that, to be in another country and see them appreciate what they were doing in that ring really made me feel good. That, it's just to show that, okay, I think the company, we're going to be okay, because, you've got people in other countries excited about it, and it is a big world. There's a lot of places to go. And that was a really great test. And I think everybody, Vince certainly had to feel good when that one was over.
Oh, yeah. And then with Warrior and Savage, before we move on, though, I've been watching Superstars airing after the SummerSlam. I've just been putting them on, watching them, and they really give credit. Like, there's no mention of Bret. I think we talked about last week. Bret Hart got cursed by Papa Shango, and that's why he lost it. And Bulldog shows up like 4 weeks later and cuts a promo. But yet with Warrior and Savage and Flair and Perfect, it even introduces Razor Ramon into this storyline. But they bring this up. Like they will not stop talking about this storyline, this angle where now Savage and Warrior are becoming friends. They're forming the Mega Maniacs. Like instead of the Mega Powers, we're creating another version of that. Savage gives sunglasses to Warrior. Savage getting beat up. Warrior saves him in street clothes. Like all these little pieces. So whatever came after this, Bret Hart and Bulldog were not part of the plan. Warrior, Savage. And when Ric Flair beats Savage 2 weeks later after this event for the world title, they stopped bringing up how Warrior is going to be the next challenger for Ric Flair. That doesn't happen on television. That doesn't happen on pay-per-view. Yeah. But the idea of Warrior turning heel before this, do you remember ever hearing that we are really going to do this? Or Warrior was just like, I can't do this. This will ruin my money.
Yeah, as I said, that was, and it seemed like a natural progression to see how that would work, because while he was over, he was never to the point of what Hulk Hogan had done for the WWE. It just didn't happen. So you're thinking, okay, well maybe, you're just thinking old school, and maybe if he was a bad guy, that might get. I think that's what they were thinking, but Jim had his own idea about what that character was. He was incredibly protective of it and felt he knew what it was all about, and that him becoming a heel would damage the brand irreparably, that he wouldn't recover. He wouldn't like suddenly be able to come back like other characters, they say Sergeant Slaughter or something like that. I think he felt that character was just a natural babyface and had to remain that way. And he was adamant. And so despite all of the talk behind the plans that they had and the storylines that they felt they could have gone with, he wasn't having it. And, he was in a position, at least at the time, where he could get away with that. And so it didn't happen. So, but, you can wonder forever what might have happened there. I don't think it would have worked.
No, I think Savage being a bad guy makes more sense.
Yeah, and I think in a sense that, Jim was right about that. I don't think the Ultimate Warrior could have been pulled off of being a heel.
Agreed. And, moving on from this, though, is to a situation that more controversy surrounds this event, because Nails fights Virgil in a match, and Nails recently came back, and he's supposed to be a convict who was abused by the big boss man while the boss man was working in Cobb County, Georgia. Mm-hmm. Apparently Nails has now got out of jail, but he likes to still wear his jumpsuit with the numbers on the back. That's his gimmick. That's his thing. Yeah. And he beats Virgil here. That's great. But and we move on to December of this year. Well, Nails chokes out Vince McMahon backstage over the Payday because of this match. He was upset. He only got $8,000 to $9,000 for this one match, and he was mad, and he chokes out Vince McMahon. Yeah. According to Bret Hart, Nails knocked Vince out of his chair and put him in a choke. According to Earl Hebner, who was there as well, again, everyone seems to be in this room at this time, Earl Hebner says he was in the hallway. He heard the whole thing. Yeah. What do you know of Nails being upset of a Payday from this SummerSlam choking out Vince?
Well, you say that everybody says they were in the room. Well, I don't know if anybody was in that room, because
outside, I guess the room is what I meant.
What's the converted? And Nails, I mean, you talk about buying a gimmick. I mean, man, there was nobody who could have played that role better than him. I mean, he was scary just to even be around. But yeah, that's I remember that day, and I've mentioned, I'm very close friends with Chris Chambers, who's with the company for over 30 years, and one of the creative forces, and I had known him working at Major League Baseball productions, and had brought him in, hooking him up with Kevin Dunn, and coming in as a producer, and that was his first event.
This event,
he was at the arena.
Oh, the choke, the choke
event, yeah. That when the choke happened, not.
Yeah,
and I just remember him saying to me, he got me into, because it was, this mad chaos. It was the way it goes, that, it all went down just the way you said it, that he was really upset. And he says, like, well, Vince, are you going to make this right? And Vince's like, no, it is what it is. And then he reaches across with the desk or wherever they are and just starts to joke them out. And people hear the commotion and they run in there, and it was like one of those scenes of, mayhem in the ring where you've got, the Pat Patterson and the refs, and they're like trying to, and he's pulling them off and going back and getting, and still trying getting his, like, and they finally get him off. And then the story goes that he went and got on the phone and called the cops and said that Vince had attempted to sexually assault him. So
makes sense.
Yeah, that was wild. And I think that some of the boys who had probably issues with Vince were like, oh, I can't believe he did that. And they're like, no, that's really cool that he did that. He actually had the balls to do that, but it wasn't a great move professionally. I would say that wasn't like but I don't think he gave an F. He was the guy that just lived his life that way in old school, and if you crossed him, you had to answer for it. So yeah, that was not that has lived in infamy for many years now. But
I'll be honest,
it happened.
Like, I don't know what the payday should be for a normal pay-per-view match, but if I was Nails, what I would have said was like, thank you so much for giving me $8,000 because I did nothing. Like, he came in and beat up Virgil. It wasn't like you were Bulldog and Bret. Like, you didn't have a bad match, Nails, but also choking someone over $9,000 or $8,000 for somewhat of a squash match. Really, I don't think you should have done that. That's me personally.
But also what paydays was he getting? I mean, he wasn't mid card. So it's not like he was used to picking up $20,000, $25,000 checks, right? So, and you're a feature, your featured matchup. You get the opportunity to be in this match, and like you said, there wasn't a lot of labor in this one.
No.
So, I think that it was also just frustration overall. It wasn't, you could say it was over that payday. But I also think that it was, lack of getting more push, higher in the card, that kind of thing. So I'm sure it was a combination of what was going on with him, and that was kind of the straw, and then and we don't really know what that conversation was. Vince could have said something that just teed him off about, you're not that good, so or you want to go, or who knows.
Yeah,
but,
I'm guessing he went, boss man, boss. No, he used to spit everywhere, and because his whole storyline, again, he beat the shit out of the big boss man on television in front of all these children crying in the audience. Boss man's been out, and the whole storyline is Nails keeps beating out people with this billy club he stole from Boss Man. Survivor Series 92, we do get a night stick on a pole match, and that's really the end. Like, Nails, this whole storyline is he's a former correction. He was in jail because of the big boss man. And Bobby Heenan on commentary for the remainder of time that Nails is there is constantly being like, he was just buying flowers for his mother on Mother's Day. And somebody said he stole the flowers. This is ridiculous. Like, I thought it was so funny, but Nails is out. And again, more fun surrounding this event involving the Hells Angels, because the first matchup is Legion of Doom taking on Money Incorporated. And we get the story too.
Yeah, but Steve, that a lot of people we don't talk about is that, that match moved up. That's not where they really initially wanted that. Now, Ted DiBiase tells the story of the fact that Mike had taken some chemicals, and Joe or Animal was aware of this, and is like, get him in the ring soon. He's not going to be able to function because these take effect, and that they had to move up the match, as he tells it, to get this to happen. Now, you watch that on YouTube of them all coming out on the motorcycles And I'm sure everybody's looking to see Mike wobbling in there. No, you know, it was a straight shot, and he doesn't look out of it. And you see, watch the entrance to the ring. He gets up on the second rope and kind of looks out or whatever, and he doesn't look like he's just totally out of it. Now, maybe it hadn't kicked in, and and you don't see it really during the match. You see a couple of things that, where he looks a little lethargic, but it isn't the disaster that that I think lore has built it up to be. But did that have something to do with the fact that, Vince is like, all right, well, you're number 2 here, or whatever the match you're in. And they had to move everything up, move them down to get to, get them out there so that by the time this happened, he wasn't just all over the place. Thank God maybe they didn't have to ride those motorcycles out of there. I'd hope not.
And
the whole thing with Rocco, we can go with that. This too is just, that was
his puppet, the puppet that raised them as a child in their crumbling home they found in Chicago rubble, that now is sitting in the front of Paul Ellering's motorcycle, and he cheers him on. So if those drugs didn't kick in during the match, they certainly probably felt like they did, because you got a goddamn puppet on the side chit-chatting away with you.
And
get in there, Rock. Go.
Yeah, God, did Joe hate that thing. I mean, and he said that it was on the burn pit after this was over. They put it in a trash can as far as they were concerned. But the whole thing with the drugs is the story also behind this is that Mike had already known that he had been tested before he went over there, and he knew it was coming. That
he failed the drug test.
That he was going to be, they were going to find whatever it was, and that he was going to be out anyway. He was going to be suspended anyway. Mm-hmm. And that kind of drove him to the point where it was like, kind of F it, I'm just going to go and get this done. And then he disappears. So, I mean, that probably had something to do with it as well. But it's unfortunate because, as we've discussed before, the one that really suffered for it all was Joe Laurinaitis, the Animal. Yeah. Because, as tag teams depend on one another, and if one half of it isn't functioning, the other half suffers, and that's exactly what happened in this case, which is really, really unfortunate. Because not only just because of how talented they were and their place, even at the time in professional wrestling, was at the top, and then these demons take over one of the one half of this great tag team, and it's never the same again. They have their moments, but that whole event and the fact that Mike disappears and Joe comes back to the States, shows up at TV thinking, okay, he's got to show up now. I mean, it happens, whatever, as long as he gets there, and he doesn't show. And that was kind of the beginning of the end. They were brothers for life, but I think that was really a giant wake up call for Joe. That regardless, of who he was and their history and everything else, that what had taken over his life was stronger than that, and that Joe couldn't count on him and would never really be able to again. They would come together, but I think Joe always had in his mind, we'll see how long it lasts. It's going to be what it is. We'll do what we can. And he realized that he had to do things on his own as a single, or he did other things with other partners, whatever. But it was never the same again.
That's true. They don't reunite until WCW in 1996, and of course we did a whole hour-long episode about Legion of Doom coming to the WWF as well, especially about this event. But I guess the lore of this is always after the show, Hawk knows he's going to fail his test, so he just bails after this. And according to rumors, he goes off and he stays in London and hangs out with the Hells Angels. And he effectively quit the WWF that week. And so that's the lore of that event, where he's popping pills before the event. He's failing drug tests before he even gets to London. He hanging out with the Hells Angels after, and that damn puppet Rocco. Again, the crowd is into it. They even show a guy who made his own Legion of Doom chest, like the football pads, the spikes. These spikes are bigger. I can't imagine in today's world just letting a dude walk into the arena and be like, come on in, sir. You have giant spiky pads on. But in 1982, they're like, come on in. You look great. And he does look great. But you turn around. What was that, miss? Boop. Pop right in the eye. Boom.
I love these people that because those guys are so massive. But it was awesome to see the headband or the face paint and and then the spikes and they have the body of Pee Wee Herman. Yeah. It's like, God love you, and I'm glad, but it's just it's not working.
No,
but you're right that the crowd was as I've said, electric there. But I mean, deep down, people had fun with it. But as Joe said, what business did we like? What in anybody's worst drug-induced mind would think that a dummy was going to help enhance one of the baddest, meanest tag teams ever to exist? That we need this to help sell us. And I don't know what Paul Ellering was thinking, and maybe he was just thinking of his next career as a ventriloquist.
He's got to work for Jim Henson or something.
That doesn't compute, and it never did for Joe either. He talks about that when they first had the discussion, and then we're selling it to Vince, and he thought it was a joke. Like, no, this is a rib. This is
there you go.
And then he was thinking that Vince isn't going to go for this. Is we'll humor Paul here, wherever but Vince is going to, and then we don't have to do it. And then it's like, sounds like a good idea to me. Like, what?
Yeah.
Now we got to really work with the dummy. Yeah, that was
all right. So if you're questioning that, I have a question for you now. There's a match between Shawn Michaels and Rick the Model Martel with Sensational Sherri on the outside. She was with Shawn Michaels at the time. The rules of their match, though, is you can't punch each other in the face because Sherri is attracted to both men. She thinks they're both so handsome, so a punch will ruin their beautiful, gorgeous faces. But most wrestling, when you watch it, a lot of punches and kicks. A lot of punching kicks. So what were your thoughts on this stipulation? But also, what were your thoughts on Sherri Martel's wardrobe this night? Because it's a full moon and it's 1992, and they don't really show bare asses like that in 92 on television. And you saw the whole thing. And Bobby Heenan made sure that he mentioned it over and over and over again. Lord King Heenan, I believe, is what he called himself all night.
Yeah. That was an interesting wardrobe choice, and kind of surprisingly and shockingly that with it. And well, it's funny because you think that the English audience was modest and very proper, but of course, if you've seen The Sun, where they used to have women's breasts in a regular newspaper all the time, it wasn't that surprising, but it was a interesting choice. And I always give credit to Sherri, because I think that women in professional wrestling owe her a great debt. That she crossed so many lines and pushed the envelope so far, and just was ready for more. And this was another example that she could get herself involved in these storylines. And my feeling at the time was like, who cares? Who cares about you wanting to make sure their faces are okay? But it was part of the work, and they went with it, and it was fun because you did have two pretty boys, the Heartbreak Kid and the model Rick Martel, who was a very good looking guy. So that they would both agree to it and say, we both don't want to mess this up, do we? It's too nice. But
I like how I heard they both agree on that. They're like, listen, I don't like you and you don't like me. But it's like when you say, don't touch the hair. Well, anything else, don't touch the hair. Like, don't touch my face.
So it was an interesting stipulation, and for them to try and pull it off. They do the kind of
Yeah,
the
yeah, I
pullback,
did like how they were like,
I can't do that.
Can't do that.
I think it took away from the match a little bit. I mean, if you were like a purist and you were looking for, because these two guys were very, very good performers in the ring. And so I think it made it a bit comical, or maybe even a lot comical. So sure, it was fun and the whole deal, but to me it was a gimmick and made the match a little more comical. That I think it could have been, a much more like pure, great professional wrestling. But that's all part of the pay-per-view event and the spectacle that you add to these matchups. So,
and Sherri's ass was
and Sherri's
out and
moon.
about. It was out.
All.
It was out and about. Though she is the highlight of this match.
And Sherri was in pretty good shape back then, and so I'm sure there were a lot of people who appreciated that. And look, and as I said, that also started to help pave the road for others that would follow her, where you would, how provocative some of these outfits and stuff would become. And so she deserves credit for that too. She pushed the envelope all the time, and she really deserves credit.
I agree, because they in 2025, as we're talking, they had an Evolution pay-per-view, all women, and there's a lot of credit to Trish Stratus and Lita. China recently is getting a lot of credit as well,
and deservedly so.
But you never, I feel like, unfortunately, you don't really do hear much about Sherri, because it's just, I don't know, it's because she wasn't in a lot of matches because she was more of a valet manager, but she was physically involved all the time versus the other women who were managers, but also had a million more matches. Yeah,
you talk about the mullahs and the all these other
Moolah and Mae Young,
from the old school and way back in the day. They were wrestling in the 60s and 70s and 80s as well. But Sherri is the one who was the crossover, because Sherri not only could go as a professional wrestler and very successfully, but she could step in the ring and go toe-to-toe with the men. Legit. I've said it before, where she would say, let's say she was involved in something and the guy was supposed to clothesline her or punch her or whatever it was. And if that sumbitch didn't lay it in, they paid the price. Like she would that receipt would be nasty. And she could bring. And I remember several times of her getting on guys saying, I'm telling you, or after they had kind of taken it easy on her, and her ripping them in the backstage and getting in their face and say, when we're working, you better, because you make me look bad. You make me look soft if you don't lay it in there. I can take it and I can deliver it too. So it's a real shame. And to take nothing away from the women that you mentioned there, of course, China and all these others and the divas and where they've come to this day, but they deserve to, they should give real credit to Sensational Sherri, because she really was the first one in my eyes who crossed over that line and showed that that she could compete on that level professionally with the men. And they should. It's something that it's a shame that she doesn't get more. And I know some people have, but I really think she really deserves a lot more credit.
Of course, because the past 5 years, China has been like reintroduced into fans, and people are really behind her, and they're upset that for years she was kind of buried because of personal things that happened within the company with her being there. I get it. It's dirty. It's a dirty situation there. But with Sherri, I think at this event, though, she does steal the show, because eventually these two men do stop punching each other in the face. She's on the apron and she passes out. And she's on the apron, and both men are trying to, like, oh my God,
revive her.
Did you have my impression of
damsel? Like you could ever believe that Sherri was a damsel.
But she's passed out, and so both men are trying to go check, but then both men keep pulling the other one away to make sure she's okay. As they're fighting through the back to the back, Sherri keeps, like, now she's looking, she's suddenly waking up, and Vince is like, oh my God, hey, she's okay, and Bobby's like, I don't know. I think she's still passed out as she's looking, and she sees both men fighting. They turn around and she just lays back down again. And it keeps happening and happening and happening. Eventually, Sean does pick her up, though, but picks her up over his shoulder. And that's when her ass is right next to his face. And they have a close-up shot, angled right there. And that's when Bobby's yelling, "It's a full moon here in London, England, McMahon."
Oh, that wasn't planned at all.
No. Rick Martel grabs a bucket of water. And I love it because he's a bad guy, but he's like, "Should I dump the water on Shawn Michaels and Sherri?" The crowd's like, "Do it! Make her wet!" And she throws the water. It hits her in the face. She wakes up, and they run to the back, and she's screaming.
Yeah.
McMahon loves it. Bobby's a little upset about it.
You know what? I take it all back. It was worth every moment.
You're like, I don't know about this match. It shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, but now you bring back, and I remember that shot when it wasn't like he picked her up, like Snow White. He's
No.
pulls her to the shoulder.
Like, sack of potatoes, walking back. He held her for like a minute like this.
Well,
and when he dropped her, like he didn't drop her like, "Oh, let me put you down nicely." It's like all the cement right in the aisle. She gets up screaming. It was a wonderful moment. And that's when we actually went backstage to you and the Nasty Boys. And that's when the Nasty Boys are like, "The witch is dead." Like they go, they're in it. They're dropping Wizard of Oz jokes.
Yeah.
It was classic. And you're there in all your glory as well. And
that just showed how funny those two guys were. I mean, those guys are legit knobs, and those guys just cracked me up. The Nasty Boys, and that's all. They're all ad libbing there. They're just coming up.
They're just shooting to go right back to them.
Yeah,
I love it. I do enjoy this one. There's a theme though, even during this and after this event, where it's like all the tag teams are managed by Jimmy Hart, who are heels, and they all want title shots, and that's what this segment's about. With you, is the Nasty Boys are asking Jimmy like, "Well, shouldn't we get the title shot next?" But he also manages Money Inc. And then he also manages ththese people and these people. And it's like, oh well. That's a theme if you've been watching all the superstars like I have, where we're trying to figure out who's the baby faces and who's the heels. The Nasty Boys eventually do turn babyface because they're pissed off at Jimmy Hart for not getting them the title shot. The Natural Disasters are the tag team champions. They wrestle the Beverly Brothers with the Genius, who I think doesn't get a lot of love either. I always love the Genius, how his poetry was either who's right. If he was writing that poetry or whoever's doing that, he's doing it original.
No, that's
every time I saw him.
Lanny. No, that was Lanny. He loved doing that. That was one of his hobbies, that he would compose poems, and he would do that. He did personal ones for people. I remember he wrote one and gave it to me one time about my announcing. I can't remember what it, but he did that because he loved doing it, and asked if it could be kind of part of his gimmick. And remember, he used to do some poetry before a match for somebody, whatever it was. Yeah. And the graduate, but I don't know, because he's a genius.
Yeah.
But Lanny, the Poffos were a talented bunch. I mean, Lanny was, he could work, but he just didn't have what his brother had, as far as that charisma goes, and the dialed in gimmick. But Lanny could go, and if you ever look back at some of his, he was very flexible. That's another story.
Leaping Lenny, I believe, is what he was going by before too. So. Yeah,
I just think that he missed a chance to really find a gimmick that worked for him.
No,
we'll leave it at that. But his poetry, that was all legit. He didn't have writers that put that stuff together.
Bo and Blake weren't writing the poetry for him.
That was pure Lanny. So
all right. And then the last match we'll talk about here before we wrap this up is Undertaker versus Kamala. Undertaker comes out in a hearse, which is very nice. This is kind of like the beginning of, again, grand entrances at events like this, because Taker will get a Raven or a Vulture at WrestleMania 9. Yeah. And then from there, Undertaker seems to get more and more and more mystique added to him. Kamala, though, recently came into this company, and so now we're having more monsters take on Taker, and this starts the trend of Undertaker slaying monsters. Personally, for you, during around this time, when you're having conversations with Undertaker, say just backstage or anything, like, does he ever share the sentiment of like, well, I'd like to go back to fighting, for the world title, not fighting monsters over and over again?
No, I don't think that was Mark's attitude ever. If you have ever, listened to his podcast, and his whole attitude to the business was always, and why I think he lasted so long is that he understood it and knew that, and had once I think that he found his place, that he never looked back. He always had that confidence that this character is locked in, and no matter, he lived it. I think that that's kind of the best way to do it. He was so locked into that character that when he was there, it was just what he did. And I think, as we've talked about before, it's a matter, he was one of those people that didn't worry about, okay, what are they going to, am I going to get the strap? Am I going to do this? It's just that his idea was just stay on top, just stay relevant, stay popular. And, when you're out there every night, you feel it. You can see if there's an ebb in it. I don't know if there was ever a point. I think that when he kind of stepped away and did a couple of other things with it from The Undertaker, it was because he was just kind of burnt out. I just want to do something different. But as far as his attitude towards the business, I don't think that ever really changed it. At that time, when you're talking specifically of slaying monsters, well, he was one of those characters that didn't need a title. It's just that, give me somebody who can stand in this ring with me and be worthy. And I don't way where he was, overconfident or thinking this is who I'm this big. But he understood that in order to be on that level and be able to stand toe to toe with that character, you had to be that big of a character. You had to be able to stand up there. You couldn't put him in there with somebody, otherwise you'd have to squash him. But you didn't want to see that every time. You want to see him challenged. And so, I think slaying monsters is a good way to describe it.
Yeah, he goes on to fight so many different people. Even out of the storyline, it introduces a Giant Gonzalez at Royal Rumble in 1993 because he keeps beating down Kamal, and that's Harvey Wippleman's ticket that time around. But yeah, I think SummerSlam 92, again, we did a whole hour on the main event last week, and now here we are talking about the rest of it, a whole hour as well. And then I'll be nice enough and I'll put the description in the bottom of part 1 of this episode. And then later in the week, if I'm feeling generous to you folks, I will put it all together in one mega episode, because we have talked for 2 hours about SummerSlam 1992. And that really shows you that this needed the time that we gave it, because other events like SummerSlam 1990 or 89, we also talked about, they're good, they're great. But 92 has this feel, this vibe. It needed this longevity for us to discuss it. So as we wrap this up, though, for some fans who are newer to wrestling and they're like, well, I don't want to go back and watch something that happened 30 years ago. Yeah. What would you say to them? What's your elevator pitch on SummerSlam 92 to a fan who's brand new, who should watch this?
Well, I think that what you should do, you watch this, the 2 hours of all the discussion on it, and you've got all this behind the scenes. As I've said, it's a great event on its own. Like, if you just watched it, I think you would go, that was really good. After you hear of all that we have discussed in the last couple of hours, and then watch it, because then you're going to be looking at when the LOD comes out, and you're kind of going to be looking at Mike and saying, okay. And you're going to match going, okay, did he slip there? Or is he, was Joe saying something to him? It's going to give you a completely different perspective. And I hope we do more of these, because as I watch them, it comes back to me, as you've noticed. We've talked before, and I've told you, I don't know if I can talk about that for 10 minutes. Well, after I go through it, and then I go back and listen to some of the interviews of the guys talking about it, and it comes out of me. And so I think that, listen to the 2 hours of our discussion, and then watch the pay-per-view, watch that event, and it's going to give you a completely different perspective the whole thing with Bret and Davey Boy. And then when you see that interview of me talking to Diana, and then you see them in the ring when it's all over, it's gonna bring an entirely of it, and you'll have a greater appreciation of really what went on with putting that event together, and where the company was, and where it went from there, and some of these superstars that unfortunately, paid a price after it. So yeah, that's that's the way I feel you should look at it. So lay out the time. You got to take in all 2 hours, and then watch the whole event.
Another 2 hours and 2 hours and a half, maybe. Yeah, no, I thought SummerSlam was so much fun to watch. Again, I watched it in like 20 something years. So when I watched it, the fans really made me enjoy everything, no matter what match was on, from Nails to Virgil to LOD, Money Inc., Warrior, and Savage. The crowd made me appreciate anything. Plus, the commentary was outstanding. When sometimes I watch older wrestling and I'm watching it, I'm like, taking notes or reading about it while watching. This was, I sat down with my kids and I'm watching it. And my kids are like, is this happening right now? I'm like, no, it's not happening right now. But
and that's an interesting dynamic too, that you had Bobby and Vince together, which didn't
Lord happen. Bobby, he was wearing a crown. Pay respect to your King, Mooney.
Of course, because he was the king of
king of comedy, 100%.
Yeah, but that was an interesting. You didn't see that combination very often, and like you said, you enjoyed it, so it worked.
It was a great event, but all in all, again, thank you everyone for enjoying another episode of the Golden Era podcast with Sean Mooney, because we are having a great time here.
We are.
It's the Golden Age of WWE, larger than life.